In the last episode, we discussed about the top 7 factors that impact Azure cost, and I also briefly touched upon some of the measures that you can take to reduce your Azure cost. Now in this episode, we will take a step ahead and understand the two calculators, the pricing calculator and the TCO calculator provided by Azure, both related to cost, but it's important to understand the differences between the both. Hello and welcome back to the Tech Blackboard. So let's start by looking at the overall definition of the both, and then we will see them in practical on the Azure portal. So let me first talk about the pricing calculator. So friends, the Azure pricing calculator is a tool provided by Microsoft that allows users to estimate the cost of using the Azure services. And you can select the services that you intend to use. For example, you can select Azure Virtual Machine or Azure Storage, and then you can specify the configuration. You can also specify the usage detail and finally calculate the estimated cost based on the current prices for those services. Now coming to the TCO calculator, also known as the total cost of ownership calculator, that's the tool again provided by Microsoft that helps users to estimate the cost of running their workloads on Azure when compared to running them on premises. And TCO also allows the users to compare the cost of different deployment options, including the cost of hardware, software, support, as well as the cost for power, cooling, and other resources. But besides all these differences, there are few similarities as well. First of all, both these calculators are accessible from the internet, and secondly, both the calculators allow you to build out a configuration. And do not worry my friends, everything from these definitions and the similarities will be now cleared out in the Azure portal. So let's begin with the pricing calculator. As I mentioned in the similarities section that both the calculators are accessible through the internet. So here I am in the pricing calculator. Here you can see that we are given with different categories of the resources or the services in Azure. You can see here that we are given with popular services, and we also have some compute services, networking, storage, and so on and so forth. And you know what friends, there is a very cool tip here for you. Whenever you're confused which kind of resources or which resource comes under which category in Azure, you can always come down to this page and clear all your doubts. Okay, so anyways, first of all, I want to show you that these are some of the categories of the resources. Then we are given with some specific resources, the most popular one. One thing I want to show you before we start, then in this lower section which says your estimate, you can see this is fully blank. We don't have any resource added as of now. So let's go back and add some resources. So here we are. Let's start with the most popular one that we always use is virtual machine. So let's add virtual machine here and see what happens. So now you see it says virtual machine is added. Now let's go back down and let's see what we have got here. So now you can see that we have one virtual machine which is added. Now friends, for each resource, the cost actually depends on the factors or the attributes that you choose for the resource. For example, which region you want to provision your virtual machine in, whether it's a East US, Central US, or any other country or region. But please note that whenever you are selecting the region, it always impacts the cost. For example, let's say that our cost now is $137 approximately. Now, if I change the region, let's take some other region. Let's take Sweden or Switzerland North. And now you can see the cost has changed. Now it is $163. So you can see as you change the attributes of any resource, the cost will be impacted. Now let's say that you have Windows, we have Linux as well. So this is the operating system. You can also choose the type. For example, if I go to Windows, then it gives me the types, for example, BizTalk or SQL Server. Then if you go to the Linux, then you have different flavors. You have Ubuntu, Red Hat, so the most popular ones. Now let's go. This is the standard and the basic tier that you can select from. Then we have some categories also given. So whether you want your virtual machine to be compute optimized, general purpose, GPU. So these are various categories of the virtual machine which are optimized for one specific purpose. So you can select, let's say for now we select just the general purpose. Similarly, the instances of the server, let's say we will go with, let's say something like this. So we go with the D series. And now you can see there is a drop down which also gives you the control over what kind of GB RAM you're looking forward, what kind of temporary storage you want, and everything has a cost also associated with it. For example, as of now, the default option gives me the cost of $96, but if I go for the higher versions, of course the cost will increase. Now once you have selected the instances, you can also select how many virtual machines do you want. You want one, or maybe you can increase. For example, let me say that okay, I want to have 5 virtual machine, and now it gives me 730 hours. You can always reduce or increase. So this is basically you're trying to say that virtual machines are running for how many hours in a month. Please note that all the billing is done monthly, so this is a very important factor for you to know. And now let me show you more options. For example, currently we are in pay as you go. You can always go for the savings plan as well. For example, let me select 3 years, and now you can see that we have a saving plan also opted for. You can also go for the reserved virtual machine, and clearly you can see the savings against the reserved virtual machine. So 1 year has a saving of 37%, similarly 59% for 3 years. So you can always go for these savings plan or the reserved instances of the virtual machine. So now you see that we have a cost calculated, but that's not all. You can also control the other factors. If you want the managed disk, you want standard, or you want premium SSD V2 version 2 basically, and then you can also control the disk size. So let's say we go for, let's take a bigger size. So let's take this one, and I say 1 here. And then you can see it gives also the cost based on the managed disk factor that we have chosen for. Similarly, you can also add snapshot if you want. Snapshot is basically what kind of redundancy you're looking for. If you're looking for the local, then of course the cost will be low. And these factors, friends, these will also change based on the operating system that you have chosen. For example, if you go for the Windows, then many other new options also pop up. Here you can see that we have license included. You can also go for the Azure hybrid benefit. And what is the Azure hybrid benefit? If you already have a license for something, you have a license for Windows, you have a license for SQL Server, that license cost you can also transfer to Azure solution. So that gives you an Azure hybrid benefit. So basically, my friends, this pricing calculator, you have to play with all these attributes. You have to select the correct operating system. You have to select correct instances. So it all depends what kind of architecture that you're going for. It's always advisable that you already have a well-established architecture before you even come to the pricing calculator. And then we can see we have other options as well. For example, you can see the storage transaction. What is the bandwidth you are looking for? Are you looking for the inter-region, or are you looking for the internet egress? Please note, this has a free data transfer to some extent. For example, I can see this is 5 GB free, but as you increase, you have to pay some cost for this data transfer as well. So I hope you understood what are the different factors that are included, what are the different attributes. You can also select the support that you want. Do you want the developer, standard, professional, direct? And I hope you remember there are a lot of questions that comes from this area, the support part in AZ-900 as well. So similarly, my friends, now you can see that we have an estimated monthly cost, which is around $1,600. You can always export this cost. You can take it to the Excel file. You can always save it. For now, it is grayed out because of the fact that I'm not logged in. But once you log in, you can always save and share. But one thing I want to show you more is that you can also add more components. Let's say we add a storage account here. So now you can see that we have storage account added. Let's go down, and now we can see, yeah, here it is. So now we can see that we have storage account as well. Similar to the virtual machine, you can also select different attributes of the storage account. We have region once again. Then we can select the type of the storage account. So do you want the Azure files, tables, queues? A lot of questions from this area comes in AZ-900. Then you can also select the performance parts. Of course, the premium is always costlier. And please note, based on the performance, these options will also change. So for example, if I select the premium, you can see the options are changing. So let me go for the standard one for now. And you can see this is the very famous, the general purpose version 2 storage account type. I will keep it that way. And then of course, the very important parameter, what kind of redundancy are you looking for? Are you looking for the local redundancy or zonal or maybe some global or read only? So what kind of redundancy you opt for really decides your cost as well. Just to give you a perspective, the local and the zonal will be comparatively cheaper, but if you go for the higher options, the cost will always be higher. So let's say we go for GRS. And now we can also see that we have capacity of the storage. Then we can see what we have got more. We have pay as you go. So of course, pay as you go is the default option. But as I showed you in the case of virtual machine as well, you can always go for the reserved instances to reduce your cost. And then you can also see that we have some operations and the data transfer. Of course, this will also impact the cost. So once you're completed and once you are convinced, okay, you have selected all the options that you wanted to go for according to your architecture, then finally you can export the cost as I showed before. And based on your decision or maybe your management decision, of course, you can go for the Azure solution or decide accordingly. So that was the pricing calculator. So now my friends, I'm on the TCO calculator, but as I showed you in the pricing calculator, which really helped me to estimate the cost of the Azure resources. But think for a while, is it always good enough to just calculate the cost of standalone resources? See, you have to understand the Azure resource or a single Azure resource is just a single tenant of your entire solution. I mean, standalone resources, of course, they are an important factor, a big dimension, but that's not all. There are other important things to be considered as well. For example, we have to think the entire operational model. So let's say your company has a big on-premises infrastructure and now you want to move to the cloud solution. In this case, we have to show the total cost of ownership when we are moving the whole infrastructure to the cloud. So friends, there is always a business perspective. So management would always be interested to know what is the cost they have to pay when moving to the cloud. In fact, they would be more interested what will be the savings that will come with the cloud migration. Now in the on-premises setup, you need to maintain the building or the on-premises, electricity, staff and other factors as well. But when you move to the clouds, these responsibilities are completely moved to the Azure, or maybe there are some shared responsibilities as well. And not to forget, my friends, there is always an element of support. I mentioned that earlier as well. What level of support that you want from Microsoft? Mostly this is guided by the criticality or the scale of your application. So how do we take all these important factors into consideration and then calculate the cost of the entire solution? Well, that's where the TCO comes into the picture. I hope you understood the gist of the differences between the pricing calculator and the TCO calculator. With that belief, let's dive into the TCO calculator. So let's start understanding the TCO calculator. Here you can see, but before that, let me adjust the zoom a little bit more. I think now it's better visible. So as you can see, the entire concept of TCO is divided into three phases. The first one is define your workloads. The second one is adjust assumption, and finally view report. And we will go through all these phases in just a little while. So let's begin with defining your workloads. It says that enter the details of your on-premises workloads. This information will be used to understand your current TCO, which is your total cost of ownership on premises, and recommend the services in Azure. And to begin with, we have some servers given up here, so you can add the server workloads. So what we're trying to do is, my friends, in TCO, we're trying to replicate the existing on-premises infrastructure. So let's start with the servers. If you want, you can also give it a name of the workload. So let's say I will say my workload, and then you can see that we have different attributes. So we can start with the workloads. So whether you want to have Windows or Linux server, or you want to go for the web app, let me go for the web app. Then you have environments, whether you want physical servers or maybe the virtual machines. I'm going with the virtual machines. Operating system, Windows, you can also select Linux. And then next attribute is operating system license, either data center or standard. Let's go for the standard. Then how many virtual machines do you want? 1, 2, 3 virtual machines you can have. I will go for the 5. Then what kind of virtualization or what kind of hypervisor that you're looking for, whether you want to have Hyper-V or VMware. I will select VMware. Then comes the cores. You can select the cores depending upon your need. RAM, optimized by CPU or memory. So what kind of optimization you're looking for? Let's go for the CPU itself. Auto scaling, if that's the need for you, you can select that also. And then you can add more server workloads if you want to have it, but for now I don't need that. Then we are given with the database section. Add the database. Let's add, I think Microsoft SQL Server is fine. Then what kind of license that you have, whether you have enterprise or standard, I would go for standard. What kind of environment you're looking for. Once again, physical servers or virtual machine. Let me go for the virtual machines. Windows, operating system, of course, Windows is fine for me. Operating system license, once again, we saw that in the previous section as well. How many virtual machines you're looking forward? So basically, we need virtual machine here so that our SQL server can be installed upon. Virtualization, cores, RAMs, optimized by, everything is kind of same. Then you can also select the destination. So what are the options given here? We have SQL database managed instance, SQL server virtual machine. So based on the selection you will do here, these options will also change. For example, if I go for the SQL Server Virtual Machine, you can see there is a change. Let's go for the default one, SQL Database. You can also select the vCore, the service type, whether you want a general purpose, hyperscale, business critical, and then the other normal attributes, for example, cores, SQL Server storage. Of course, this is a very important element, what kind of backup you're looking for. And then, my friends, as usual, you can add more databases if you want. Then you have storage section. Let's see what we have gotten here. So we have storage type, what kind of storage you're looking for, local, NAS, blob. Let's go for the blob one. So what kind of accessibility you are looking for. So depending upon your need, you can fill this section as well. Then comes the networking part. I think the default one is fine for me. Then I will say next. Okay, and now you can see that we have landed in the adjust assumption phase. So what it says is the following assumption in the TCO model are industry averages accredited by Nucleus Research. And to get a more accurate TCO report, update and customize these values to reflect your situation, which can vary by industry and location. So now you see, my friends, we have software assurance coverage. It provides the Azure hybrid benefit. We talked about this in the previous section as well. So let's go a little further. It says the geo-redundant storage or the GRS. You can also learn if you want about GRS. And then moving ahead, we have other attributes like virtual machine costs, electricity cost. And friends, these small parameters are very important because the electricity cost can really vary upon the region that you are in. Similarly, you have the storage cost, then you also have the IT labor cost, which once again is quite region dependent. Then we have other assumptions to be made. What is the hardware cost, software cost, electricity cost, virtualization? You can see a lot of parameter here. And once again, I want to remind you what we are trying to do is we are trying to replicate our on-premises setup or infrastructure in this TCO calculator. So I suggest you, the more close you are to the infrastructure that you have on-premises, the better cost prediction this calculator will give you. So it's almost like visiting a doctor. You have to tell your symptoms correctly so that the doctor can give you the right medicine. Let's move ahead. It says next. And now we have reached to the view report phase. And now you can see that my cost over 5 years with Microsoft Azure, it comes as $39,102. And let's see what more we have got here. So you can see this is the comparison between the on-premises cost. You can see this is the on-premise cost, the upper graph, and the lower graph, which is this one, the light green one. This represents the Microsoft Azure cost. So you can see there is certainly a benefit when you're moving your on-premises infrastructure to Microsoft Azure. And remember, you would need this to convince your management moving to the cloud infrastructure. Similarly, you can also see what is the comparison of your on-premises over the 5 years to the infrastructure cost on Azure for the 5 years. So really elaborated comparison here. You can see that we have not selected most of the option. That's why this is 0 for some of the factors. But let's go ahead. We don't need to, we just need to understand the concept here. Here you can see comparison in a more granular way. Let's go ahead, and you can see a lot of other factors are also given. So as we saw in the pricing calculator as well, here you can download, you can share, and you can save the report to show it to the big bosses of the company. So let's summarize what we have learned today. Azure Pricing Calculator is a web application that helps the users to estimate the cost of using Azure services. The application includes a cost calculator for compute, storage, and networking services, as well as the pricing calculator for cloud applications. But please remember, my friends, the pricing calculator is not the guarantee of the pricing, but surely it can be used to get an estimate of the cost of running the Azure services. Also, the pricing calculator provides a detailed breakdown of the cost associated with each service, including the cost per month and per hour. And then as a user, you can also use the pricing calculator to estimate the cost for different Azure regions, because the prices can vary depending upon the location of the data center where the service are hosted. Now coming to the TCO calculator, it helps users to understand the long-term cost of running their workloads on Azure, including the cost of operating system, maintaining the services, as well as the cost of scaling and expanding the services as needed. It allows the users to compare the cost of different deployment options, including the cost of hardware, software, and support, as well as the cost of power, cooling, and other resources. And of course, it can also help the users to identify the areas where they can reduce the cost and optimize their resource usage. And friends, in the next episode, we are going to cover two sections: describe the Azure Cost Management tool, and secondly, describe the purpose of tags. And that's all for today. My humble request to please like and share the videos and subscribe to the channel. Press that bell icon so that you get all the timely notifications of all our upcoming videos. And I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay fit, keep learning, and thanks for watching.